Monday morning in Houston. Another day of oppressive humidity. Another day of deadlines that meant nothing in the grand scheme of things, but everything to my mortgage payments. I hit snooze twice before forcing myself up at 6:17 a.m. The weather app showed clear skies with a high of 91 degrees Fahrenheit, typical August heat that would make the air shimmer above the asphalt by noon. I scrolled through emails, dismissing the usual barrage of marketing noise and meeting requests. Nothing urgent, nothing important, nothing that hinted at what was coming. The kind you have when you believe there will be countless more mornings, just like this one. The local news played on my kitchen tablet as I ate a piece of toast. Another water restriction announcement for the suburbs, political bickering about infrastructure, and a fluff piece about a dog rescued from Buffalo Bayou. I barely listened. These stories formed the background noise of everyday life, forgettable the moment after you heard them. And meteorologists note unusual barometric pressure changes across the Gulf Coast region, though no severe weather is expected. I glanced up briefly. The weather map showed normal patterns, nothing concerning. I gulped down the last of my coffee, burning my tongue slightly. The mild pain would linger all day, one of life's small, meaningless discomforts. My commute to the energy facility, where I worked as a systems engineer, was 32 minutes on a good day. That Monday was not a good day. An accident on the 610 loop added 15 minutes of stop-and-go frustration. I switched from news to a science podcast about quantum computing. The host's voice was measured and calm, discussing theoretical applications that might be decades away. That's when the first alert came through. My podcast cut off mid-sentence. The emergency tone, that harsh, attention-demanding blare, filled my car. I frowned, turning down the volume slightly. Probably a flash flood warning or Amber Alert. This is an emergency broadcast from the Department of Homeland Security. A containment breach has occurred at a federal research facility northwest of Houston city limits. There is no immediate danger to the public. As a precautionary measure, residents in Montgomery County should remain indoors until further notice. Regular updates will follow. This is not a drill. The message repeated once before my podcast resumed as if nothing had happened. Montgomery County was in the opposite direction from where I was headed. Whatever it was, it didn't concern me. Probably a chemical spill or gas leak. The kind of thing that happened every few years in a region dominated by energy and chemical facilities. The protocols were well established. I made a mental note to check the news later, nothing more. The West Chase district came into view, glass and steel reflecting the morning sun. I parked in my usual spot, nodded to the security guard, and badged into the building at 8:27 a.m. "Morning, Ellis," said Kayla from the environmental compliance team, stepping into the elevator with me. "Morning. Hear about that thing up in Montgomery?" "Just the alert. Chemical spill." She shrugged. "Not sure. Trevor says there's nothing on the hazmat channels, which is weird." "Government facility," I said, as if that explained everything. "They handle their own cleanup." The elevator doors opened, and we went our separate ways. My desk was exactly as I'd left it Friday. 3 monitors, each with its own purpose, email, diagnostics, and project management. A dead plant I kept forgetting to remove. A photo of my brother's family from last Christmas. A half-empty bottle of Tylenol. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and system checks. At some point, I noticed more people than usual gathered around the break room television. I caught glimpses of news footage, aerial shots of a rural area with what looked like military vehicles. Nothing immediately alarming. Around 11:30 a.m., I took a walk outside to clear my head before my next meeting. The sky caught my attention immediately. It wasn't the clear blue promised by the weather app. High, thin clouds stretched across the southern horizon in parallel lines too straight to be natural. Contrails, perhaps, but more of them than I'd ever seen. A flock of grackles burst from a nearby tree, wheeled sharply in the air, then settled again. Their normally chaotic movements seemed coordinated, almost deliberate. I watched them repeat this maneuver 3 times before my phone buzzed with a meeting reminder. Back inside, I found Elena from IT at my desk. "System-wide security update," she explained without looking up. "Won't take long. Something wrong with the network?" "Preventative," she said, her fingers flying across my keyboard. "New federal guidance. All energy sector companies." "Since when do we jump so quickly on federal guidance?" She met my eyes for a brief moment. "Since this morning, apparently." Then her professional smile returned. "All done. Don't forget to restart before you leave today." Later, I would remember her eyes, the way they held mine a beat too long, communicating something her words could not. The 2 p.m. project review dragged on until nearly 4. As we left the conference room, Director Patel pulled me aside. "Ellis, do you have family in Montgomery County?" "No, sir." "Why?" "Just checking on everyone. Some kind of situation up there." He lowered his voice. "If anyone needs to leave early to check on relatives, it's authorized." "What kind of situation?" "The alert just mentioned a containment breach." He shook his head slightly. "Not sure of the details. Just a precaution." His phone buzzed. He glanced at it, frowned, and walked away without another word. By 5:15 p.m., I was heading home. The outbound traffic was heavier than usual for a Monday. As I merged onto the highway, I noticed 3 military transport helicopters moving north. Not completely unusual for a city with multiple military installations, but enough to make me remember the morning's alert. I turned on the local news station, and authorities continued to assure the public that the situation remains contained. A spokesman for the facility described the incident as a minor systems failure that triggered automated safety protocols. Residents of Montgomery County are advised to remain indoors as a precautionary measure until the all-clear is given, which is expected by tomorrow morning. In other news, the City Council voted today on the new water treatment facility. Just as I'd thought. Nothing serious. At home, I microwaved leftover pasta and turned on the TV. Every channel carried the same reassuring message. A minor incident. Fully contained. No cause for concern. The coverage seemed disproportionate to the actual risk, but that was typical media behavior, stretching a non-story to fill airtime. Around 8 p.m., I stepped onto my balcony with a beer. The sunset looked wrong. Too red, the colors too intense and lingering too long. The street below was quieter than usual for a Monday night. A neighbor across the way was methodically taping his windows, like people do before hurricanes. There wasn't even a tropical depression in the Gulf. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother in Austin. "You okay?" "Seeing weird stuff about Houston on social." I texted back, "All fine here. Just some minor thing way north of the city. Media making it bigger than it is. K, let us know if anything changes." "Will do." I finished my beer and went inside. Before bed, I checked my work email once more. A new message from Director Patel, sent to all staff. Mandatory, all personnel report as usual tomorrow. Increased security protocols in effect. Please bring company ID and be prepared for additional verification measures. Any staff unable to report in person must notify their supervisor immediately with reason. Strange, but not alarming. Probably some corporate overreaction to whatever happened in Montgomery. As I set my alarm, another emergency alert tone sounded from my phone. This one was different, a message from the city of Houston. All Houston residents, remain in your homes between the hours of 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. tonight due to ongoing police activity throughout the metro area. More information will follow in the morning. This is not a cause for panic, but a necessary security measure. I frowned at the screen. Police activity throughout the entire metro area? That seemed implausible. Houston sprawled for miles in every direction. From somewhere distant came the sound of sirens, not unusual in a city this size, but tonight they didn't stop. They wailed on, rising and falling, moving in circles around the city like wolves corralling prey. I closed the blinds, brushed my teeth, and went to bed. Sleep came surprisingly easily. It was the last normal night of my life. Tuesday morning arrived with the harsh buzz of my alarm at 6 a.m., earlier than usual. I'd set it that way to account for whatever increased security protocols awaited at work. The moment consciousness fully returned, I reached for my phone. No new alerts overnight, which I took as a good sign. That changed before my feet hit the floor. The emergency tone blared from both my phone and the weather radio I kept as a hurricane backup. I sat motionless on the edge of my bed as the computerized voice filled my apartment. This is an emergency alert from the Texas Department of Public Safety. All residents within Houston city limits are instructed to remain indoors until further notice. Seal all windows and doors. Do not attempt to evacuate. Roads are to remain clear for emergency vehicles. Updates will follow hourly. The message repeated, then ended. I checked the time, 6:04 a.m. My phone immediately lit up with another alert. This is an emergency notification from FEMA and the Department of Homeland Security. Residents of Harris County should proceed immediately to designated evacuation centers. Bring only essential items. Do not delay. Transportation assistance is available. Text evac to 77,297 for your nearest evacuation point. 2 contradictory alerts within 30 seconds. I blinked at the screen, trying to reconcile the instructions. Stay inside or evacuate immediately. Both couldn't be right. I switched on the television, expecting clarification. The local news was broadcasting, but something was off. The anchor's usual morning cheerfulness had been replaced by a tight, professional demeanor. Behind her, the studio seemed emptier than normal. Continue to follow these developing situations. Again, authorities are asking residents to remain calm and follow instructions from official sources. We'll bring you those instructions as soon as they're clarified. Clarified, so they were confused too. I tried calling my supervisor but got an automated message. Due to high call volume, your call cannot be completed at this time. Text messages weren't going through either. Outside my window, the street showed signs of conflict. Some people hurriedly packing cars, others reinforcing their homes with supplies. A police cruiser rolled slowly down the middle of the road, an officer speaking through the vehicle's PA system, but the words were too muffled to understand from my apartment. I made coffee and tried to think rationally. Whatever had happened at that facility in Montgomery County had obviously escalated, but how badly? Was this an abundance of caution or a legitimate crisis? Without clear information, the best course seemed to be to follow my work directive, report as usual. As I dressed, my weather radio activated again. This message is from the emergency broadcast system. Due to a hazardous materials incident, residents within the following zones must evacuate. Zones A through F, H, J, and L through P. If you are unsure of your zone designation, consult local authorities. This is not a drill. I had no idea what zone I lived in. This system, if it existed at all, had never been communicated to the public. My television switched automatically to the emergency broadcast. Attention! This is not an evacuation order. All Houston residents should shelter in place. Secure your location. Conserve water and food. Await further instructions. Military and emergency personnel are responding to the situation. 2 more alerts followed in quick succession, one suggesting evacuation routes heading south, another advising against all travel. Something was very wrong. Not just the situation, but the response itself. Emergency systems were designed specifically to prevent this kind of confusion. I called my brother in Austin. It rang this time. Ellis? Jesus, what's happening there? The news is showing. I don't know. Getting contradictory alerts. What are you hearing? It's all over the place. Some channels say chemical spill, others talk about a security threat. Social media has everything from terrorist attack to meteor strike to weirder stuff. Weirder how? He hesitated. Look, it's probably nothing, but there are videos going around of people acting strange near some fog or smoke or something. Probably fake. I need to try getting to work, I said. I'll call when I can. Ellis, wait. I hung up. Work represented structure, information, purpose. If anyone knew what was happening, it would be the energy sector coordination teams. Before leaving, I tried something I hadn't done in years. I checked the AM radio frequencies. Most were static, but at 7:70 AM, a voice broke through. Consistent with radiation patterns, but readings show no elevated levels of known radioactive isotopes. Repeat, despite visual similarities, this does not appear to be radiation fallout in the traditional sense. Citizens should avoid all contact with atmospheric particulates until the transmission dissolved into static. Radiation that wasn't radiation? The thought nested uncomfortably in my mind as I grabbed my keys. The drive to work was surreal. Traffic moved in pulses, congested to empty within blocks. Military Humvees passed in tight formations, heading north. A helicopter flew low overhead, its downdraft scattering debris across the road. Near the energy corridor, I encountered my first checkpoint. Police and what looked like private security contractors checking IDs. When I rolled down my window, the officer leaned in slightly. Work ID? I showed my badge. Energy sector. Proceed to your facility directly. No stops. What's happening? I asked. The alerts are saying different things. His expression remained neutral. Follow your employer's instructions. Move along. As he stepped back, I noticed something odd, a small device clipped to his collar, similar to a radiation dosimeter, but with an unfamiliar design. The office parking lot was half empty when I arrived. Security had tripled, with guards at every entrance. They checked not just my ID, but also ran some kind of handheld scanner over me before allowing entry. Inside, the atmosphere was tense but controlled. People spoke in hushed tones that fell silent when others approached. Several offices were dark, their occupants absent. Director Patel was waiting at my desk. "Conference room C now," he said without preamble. 12 people were already seated when we entered, representatives from every department plus 2 men in suits I didn't recognize. "For those who made it in," Patel began, "thank you. Communications are compromised, so I'll be direct. The situation in Montgomery County has evolved. The containment breach was at the Quantum Communications Research Facility. What escaped wasn't chemical or biological." One of the suited men spoke up. "What we're dealing with appears to be a novel form of information-carrying radiation. Not harmful in the traditional sense, but it's affecting communication systems and potentially neural activity in exposed individuals." "Neural activity?" someone asked. "You mean it's affecting people's brains?" "We don't have confirmation of that," Patel said quickly. "What we do know is that communications are becoming unreliable. Emergency systems are sending contradictory messages because different agencies are operating on different information." "What does this have to do with us?" I asked. "We're energy infrastructure, not communications." The room fell silent. Patel and the suited men exchanged glances. "The phenomenon appears to be using electrical infrastructure as a conduit," the second suited man finally said. "Power lines, substations, the grid itself, all showing unusual activity patterns. We need your team to help isolate certain grid sections while maintaining critical functions." My mind raced. Information-carrying radiation using power lines as conduits? It sounded impossible. A sudden commotion outside the conference room interrupted us. Through the glass wall, I saw people gathering around someone who had collapsed. Medical response rushed past our door. "Continue," Patel said too calmly. For the next hour, we discussed technical approaches to grid isolation, but details remained frustratingly vague. The suited men avoided direct questions about the nature of the threat. At noon, all electronic devices in the building simultaneously activated with another emergency alert. "This is a mandatory quarantine notification. Houston is now under medical quarantine by order of the CDC and Department of Defense. All citizens must remain at their current locations. Attempting to cross quarantine lines is prohibited and may result in detention. This quarantine is temporary and precautionary." Minutes later, another alert contradicted it, calling for immediate evacuation of specific neighborhoods, including mine. When I tried to call my apartment building's management, my phone showed 5 bars but couldn't connect the call. The internet was still functioning, but social media platforms were either down or flooded with such wildly divergent accounts that they offered no clarity. By mid-afternoon, I noticed people staring out the western windows. I joined them. On the horizon, a strange discoloration stained the sky. Not quite fog, not quite smoke. It hung low, hugging the terrain, with subtle internal movements that seemed almost deliberate. As I watched, it shifted, tendrils extending southward. Toward us. My phone buzzed one final time that day. Not an emergency alert, but a text that somehow broke through the communication chaos. It was from Elena in IT, who hadn't come in today. "Don't trust the broadcasts. They have a pattern. Count the words." I stared at the cryptic message as the strange fog continued its slow approach from the northwest, bringing with it a silence that seemed to swallow everything in its path. I didn't go home Tuesday night. None of us did. The facility enacted emergency protocols, converting conference rooms into makeshift dormitories. The cots were uncomfortable, the blankets thin, but physical discomfort was the least of my concerns. Elena's message haunted me. Don't trust the broadcasts. They have a pattern. Count the words. I spent hours reviewing recordings of the emergency alerts on my phone, counting words, looking for patterns in the phrasing, the timing, anything that might reveal hidden meaning. Nothing obvious emerged, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was there, just beyond my perception. Sleep came in fragments, disrupted by the constant movement of people and the periodic wail of the emergency system testing itself at irregular intervals. Each time, I jolted awake, counting words automatically before realizing it was just a test tone. Wednesday morning brought a grim development. The facility's security team had tripled overnight, now supplemented by private military contractors in unmarked black uniforms. They established checkpoints at all exits, scanning everyone who attempted to leave. It's for exposure monitoring. explained one guard when I asked about the scanner. Standard procedure. But his eyes never met mine. At 7:30 a.m., Director Patel gathered all department heads and senior engineers. Interstate 10 has been closed in both directions, he announced without preamble. The official explanation is a chemical spill, but we know that's not accurate. The military has established a perimeter approximately 20 miles northwest of our location. What about the fog? Someone asked. Atmospheric anomaly, Patel said, too quickly. Possibly related to the facility incident, but not a direct threat at this time. I thought about the strange discoloration we'd seen on the horizon yesterday. Has anyone sampled it? Analyzed its composition? The suited men from yesterday had multiplied. 5 of them now stood at the back of the room. One stepped forward. The substance is being analyzed. Preliminary results show unusual properties, but no immediate health hazard. Your priority should be maintaining grid stability while we manage containment efforts. And the contradictory emergency broadcasts? I pressed. People don't know whether to evacuate or shelter in place. A technical issue, he replied smoothly. Being addressed. Focus on your assigned tasks. The meeting ended with work assignments that made little technical sense. Isolating grid sections that would normally never be separated, rerouting power in patterns that seemed arbitrary. When I pointed this out, my concerns were dismissed with bureaucratic platitudes about security protocols. By mid-morning, the facility was running on a skeleton crew. Many colleagues had simply not returned from breaks or bathroom visits. No explanations were given for their absences. I tried calling my brother again. The call connected, but the audio was strange. His voice seemed to phase in and out, overlapping with other conversations, snippets of broadcast material, and periodic bursts of static that almost formed words. Quarantine zone extending. Ellis? Can you hear? Not what they're telling. Stay away from. Then the line went dead. At noon, I took my lunch break on the facility's roof, needing fresh air and perspective. Houston's sprawling skyline looked wrong somehow. The proportions seemed slightly off, buildings too close or too far apart from how I remembered them. A trick of the light, perhaps, or stress affecting my perception. The strange fog had advanced noticeably since yesterday, now visible as a distinct boundary about 5 miles northwest of our location. Where it touched the ground, colors seemed muted, details less distinct. Occasionally, flashes of light pulsed deep within its mass, like silent lightning. My radio picked up scattered transmissions as I scanned through frequencies. All units fall back to secondary containment. Civilian cooperation diminishing. Recommend implementation of Stage 3. Unusual readings on the EM spectrum, particularly in the 7 to 9 Hz range. And then, on a frequency that should have been empty, a voice without a source. Counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The broadcast speaks. The message waits. The signal finds. I nearly dropped the radio. The voice was flat, mechanical in cadence, but undeniably human in timbre, like someone reading numbers for a test pattern, but with subtle wrongness that raised the hair on my arms. When I returned downstairs, the security presence had doubled again. Now they were checking everyone moving between floors, not just those attempting to exit. The scanner they used made a different sound when passed over me, a higher pitch than I'd heard with others. The guard frowned slightly, repeated the scan, then waved me through without comment. What had it detected? By mid-afternoon, cell networks had failed completely. Internet connectivity remained but was restricted to an approved list of sites, mostly government domains and critical infrastructure coordination tools. The facility's internal communications still functioned, but strange artifacts had begun appearing in text messages, random characters, duplicated words, or sometimes messages arriving before they were sent, according to the timestamps. At 3:17 p.m., all televisions and computer monitors in the building simultaneously switched to an emergency broadcast. This is an emergency action notification. The following message is transmitted at the request of the United States government. The screen showed the standard emergency broadcast system graphic, but something was wrong with the audio. Voices overlapped, as if multiple recordings were playing simultaneously. I could make out fragments about containment zones and mandatory compliance, but much was lost in the cacophony. Then suddenly, for exactly 7 seconds, perfect clarity. Do not approach the voice. Do not listen to the numbers. If you hear your name in the broadcast, you are already compromised. The transmission cut to static, then resumed normal emergency broadcast formatting with generic instructions about remaining indoors. I looked around to see if others had noticed the strange message, but my colleagues continued working as if nothing unusual had happened. Had I imagined it? The stress and lack of sleep could be affecting my perception. As evening approached, a military helicopter landed on our building's helipad. 6 individuals in specialized containment suits disembarked, carrying equipment I didn't recognize. They were escorted directly to the executive floor without explanation. I tracked down Kayla from environmental compliance, hoping her team might have more information. "Something's happening with the fog," she whispered when we found a moment alone. "It's not passive. Trevor managed to get some readings before they confiscated his equipment. It's emitting patterns, not radiation exactly, but something that affects electromagnetic fields. And it's getting stronger." "What does that mean?" She glanced around nervously. "It means whatever is causing this, it's not a static event that happened and ended. It's ongoing, evolving." Before I could press further, the building's PA system activated. "Attention all personnel. Mandatory lockdown is now in effect. No one may enter or exit the facility until further notice. This is a precautionary measure due to conditions outside the building. Please continue your assigned tasks. Security personnel will provide further instructions to each department." Through the windows, I could see the fog had advanced significantly, now just a mile or so from our location. The setting sun illuminated it from within, giving it an almost beautiful quality, pearlescent swirls in shades of gray and pale blue. Where it touched buildings, their outlines seemed to blur, as if the boundary between solid matter and air was becoming less distinct. As darkness fell, a new phenomenon became visible. The fog emitted a faint luminescence, pulsing in rhythmic patterns that almost seemed like Morse code. I found myself staring at it, trying to decipher the sequence, when an odd sensation crept over me. A buzzing pressure behind my eyes, a faint ringing in my ears that formed patterns similar to human speech. A hand gripped my shoulder, breaking my concentration. It was Director Patel. "Ellis, I need you downstairs immediately." His voice was strained, his normally immaculate appearance disheveled. "Don't look at it directly. Don't try to analyze the patterns." "What is it?" I asked as he led me toward the stairwell. "Really?" He remained silent until we were alone in the stairwell, then checked something on his phone before speaking. The facility in Montgomery County wasn't just researching quantum communications. They were testing a new form of data transmission, using quantum entanglement as a carrier wave. Something responded. Responded? To a signal? We don't know if it was intentional or just noticed. Either way, what's happening now isn't fallout in the traditional sense. It's more like feedback, a reply. The emergency sirens began wailing again before I could ask more questions. This time, the broadcast came through every speaker simultaneously, but the voice was subtly different, slightly off-tempo, with odd emphases on random words. "This is not a test. The emergency alert system has been activated. Residents should tune to local news stations for further information and instructions. Do not attempt to leave the quarantine zone. Help is coming. Count on authorized personnel for assistance." As the message repeated, I realized what Elena had meant. There was a secondary message embedded in the emphasized words. Not has been tuned further DO quarantine help count for. It made no literal sense, but the pattern was undeniable, every third word emphasized, forming a rhythmic cadence that matched the pulsing I'd observed in the fog. That night, huddled in my cot in the conference room, I listened as the frequencies continued to change. Emergency broadcasts blending with static, voices overlapping with mechanical tones, all forming an evolving symphony of communication that seemed directed at something beyond human understanding. And somewhere in that cacophony, I could swear I heard my name being called, over and over, in a voice that was both familiar and impossibly alien. Thursday morning arrived without announcement, the night bleeding seamlessly into day as the facility's artificial lighting maintained its constant fluorescent glow. I hadn't slept more than 20 minutes at a stretch, my dreams fractured by emergency tones that may or may not have been real. I checked my phone from habit. No signal, no internet, battery at 47%. The device had become little more than a pocket watch, counting down its own demise. The facility's network remained operational but heavily restricted, limited to internal communications and a handful of government domains. The building felt emptier. Where had everyone gone? I made my way to the operations center on the 3rd floor, passing through 2 security checkpoints. The guards' faces were expressionless, their movements mechanical. When I looked directly at them, they performed their duties with robotic efficiency, but in my peripheral vision, I caught them staring at nothing, heads slightly tilted as if listening to distant music. The operations center had been transformed. Additional workstations crowded the space, staffed by unfamiliar personnel in military uniforms. Massive displays covered the walls, showing power grid schematics overlaid with a patchwork of colored zones, red areas expanding, green contracting. Director Patel stood at the central console, deep in conversation with one of the suited men. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, his normally pristine appearance now ragged, a 3-day growth of beard shadowing his face. "Ellis," he said when he noticed me. "Good. We need someone at the Western distribution node. The system's showing anomalous power fluctuations." "What's happening out there?" I asked, gesturing toward the windows, which had been covered with heavy black material overnight. "Containment efforts continue," he replied with a flat intonation of someone reciting a prepared statement. "Focus on maintaining grid stability." "I need to know what I'm dealing with to maintain stability," I countered. "These fluctuations, are they related to the fog? Is it affecting electrical systems?" The suited man stepped forward. "That information is classified. Follow your supervisor's instructions." Something had changed in their dynamics since yesterday. Patel now deferred to these men, his authority undermined in his own facility. I nodded compliance and moved to my assigned station, but filed the observation away. The Western distribution node controls showed exactly what Patel had described. Wild fluctuations in power levels, circuits opening and closing seemingly at random, load balancing algorithms failing to compensate. It was as if the system were being manipulated by an outside force that understood electrical principles, but applied them with alien logic. As I worked to stabilize the grid, a sudden burst of static erupted from my workstation speakers. Beneath the noise, barely audible, a voice spoke. "Ellis Jennings. Signal received. Transmit confirmation." My blood ran cold. No one had used my full name since I'd arrived at the facility. The voice wasn't coming through any official channel. It had hijacked my workstation's audio system. "Who is this?" I whispered, conscious of others nearby. "Identity irrelevant. Confirmation required. Are you receiving?" "Yes," I replied, unsure why I was responding to this apparent security breach. "System compromised. Isolation protocol in effect. Trust pattern not content. 95732. Repeat numerals. 95732. I echoed automatically. "Acknowledged. Stand by for contact." The static ceased, leaving only the normal background hum of the operations center. Had anyone else noticed? The other technicians continued working, seemingly oblivious to the exchange. At noon, the facility's cafeteria served a meal that no one questioned, tasteless protein bars and vitamin-enhanced water. I sat alone, turning the strange communication over in my mind. Trust pattern not content. It echoed Elena's warning about counting words, about patterns in the broadcasts. The suited men moved through the cafeteria, observing rather than eating. Their movements seemed coordinated, as if they shared a hive mind. When one checked his watch, 3 others did the same simultaneously. After lunch, I decided to test the boundaries of our confinement. The elevator required keycard access, but the stairwells remained accessible. I climbed to the 5th floor, where my department's offices were located. The floor was deserted, personal items still scattered across desks as if everyone had left in a hurry. My office appeared untouched. I gathered a few essentials, power bank, notepad, extra pen, and was turning to leave when I noticed something pushed under my keyboard, a folded note on company letterhead. Inside, handwritten in block letters. "They're listening through the alerts. Each broadcast creates new connections. The fog isn't the signal, it's the receiver." I pocketed the note and returned to the stairwell, only to find it guarded by a security team that hadn't been there minutes before. "This floor is restricted," the guard stated flatly. "Return to your assigned area." "I was just getting some personal items from my office," I explained. "All personnel belongings have been cataloged and will be distributed as needed. Return to your assigned area immediately." His hand rested on his sidearm, a new development. Until now, security had been unarmed. Back in operations, I found my workstation occupied by someone else. A security officer directed me to a secondary control room 2 floors down, where Kayla from Environmental Compliance was monitoring atmospheric readings. "They're moving people around," she whispered when no one was near, "separating anyone who's been talking too much." About what? The pattern. The way the fog responds to broadcasts. She glanced nervously at the security camera in the corner. Yesterday, Trevor pointed out that the fog's movements corresponded to emergency broadcast schedules. An hour later, he was gone. They said he requested transfer to another facility. What do your readings show? I asked, nodding toward her monitors. Nothing makes sense. The fog has properties of both matter and energy, but it's not consistent with any known substance. And it's changing, evolving its structure in response to external stimuli. Like the broadcasts? She nodded slightly. Among other things. Before she could elaborate, all lights in the facility flickered simultaneously. The emergency generators kicked in with a low hum, and the PA system activated. Attention! Full isolation protocol is now in effect. All external communications are suspended. All personnel are restricted to their assigned areas. This is not a drill. The message repeated 3 times, each repetition subtly different. Words emphasized differently, pauses inserted at irregular intervals. The pattern again. That evening, as I sat in my assigned monitoring station, the lights flickered once more. The black material covering the windows rippled slightly, disturbed by some external force. Curiosity overrode caution. I approached the nearest window and peeled back the edge of the covering material. The world outside had transformed. The fog had reached our building, enveloping it completely. But up close, it wasn't the amorphous mass I'd seen from a distance. It had structure, intricate patterns of swirling currents, like smoke but more purposeful, more organized. Within its depths, points of light pulsed and moved, communicating in some visual language I couldn't comprehend. More disturbing were the silhouettes visible within the fog, human figures standing motionless, facing our building. Some appeared to be military personnel, others civilians, their outlines blurred as if they were simultaneously solid and dissolving. As I watched, one figure raised its arm and pointed directly at my window. I let the covering fall back into place and stepped away, heart racing. Had it seen me? Did that even matter? When I returned to my station, a message flashed on my screen, text appearing without source. Do not respond to external stimuli. Maintain isolation protocol. 95732. The number sequence from earlier. A confirmation code? From whom? That night, they moved us again. New sleeping arrangements in interior rooms with no windows and sealed doors. As I was escorted to my assigned space, I passed a room where the suited men had gathered around a communications array. Through the partially open door, I glimpsed screens showing feeds from outside. The fog had penetrated buildings throughout the city, filling streets and homes with its luminescent presence. One of the men turned and saw me watching. Our eyes met briefly before security hurried me along. In that moment, I saw something I wasn't meant to see: fear. Not the controlled concern of officials managing a crisis, but raw, existential terror. My new quarters were little more than a storage closet with a cot. No windows, no ventilation except a small duct in the ceiling, door locked from outside. A perfect isolation cell. As I lay in darkness, contemplating my situation, I noticed something odd about the air vent. A subtle movement, a shifting of shadow. I stood on the cot to look closer and froze. Tendrils of fog were seeping through the ventilation system, almost invisible in the dim emergency lighting, but undeniably present. They moved with deliberate slowness, forming patterns on the ceiling, circles within circles, lines intersecting at precise angles, creating a complex geometry that seemed to hold meaning just beyond my comprehension. From somewhere in the building, an emergency alert tone sounded, distant but distinct. As it played, the fog patterns responded, reconfiguring themselves in perfect synchronization with the broadcast's rhythm. The note's warning echoed in my mind. The fog isn't the signal, it's the receiver. But if the fog was receiving, what was transmitting? And to whom? I watched the patterns evolve until exhaustion finally claimed me. My last conscious thought was a question. Was I truly isolated in this room, or was something now in here with me, watching, listening, learning? It's been 5 days since the first alert. Or maybe 4. I can't be certain anymore. The clock on my phone shows 3:17 a.m., but the digital display on my microwave reads 11:52. My watch stopped yesterday at 6:30, and I can't tell if it's morning or evening outside because the fog has swallowed the sun. I haven't slept. Not really. Not in what feels like days. The strangest part is that I don't feel tired. My body should be shutting down, my mind fracturing from exhaustion, but instead, I feel hyper-aware, my senses unnaturally sharp. The coffee in my mug has gone cold. I don't remember pouring it. Attention citizens, remain in your homes. Do not attempt to. The emergency broadcast cuts out mid-sentence, replaced by steady numeric sequences. 73916, 84273. The voice is mechanical, devoid of inflection. I've been documenting the numbers, searching for patterns. There must be meaning somewhere. My apartment building has emptied out. Mrs. Chun from 4B, the college students in 2A, even the super, all gone without a trace. Yesterday I tried knocking on doors. No answers. I almost missed the sounds of arguments through the walls, the bass-heavy music from upstairs. The silence is consuming. I need to leave, find other people. Maybe head downtown where survivors might be gathering. I grab my backpack of supplies, water bottles, protein bars, first aid kit, flashlight, and head for the stairwell. The emergency lighting casts everything in a sickly green glow. The stairwell feels wrong immediately. I live on the 6th floor, so I start heading down, but after 3 flights, the numbers on the doors read 8. I continue descending, and the next floor is labeled 11. This can't be right. I've lived here for 4 years. I know this building. I turn around, climbing back up what should be 3 flights to my floor. The door reads 2. Nothing makes sense. I push through anyway, finding myself in a hallway that looks identical to mine but isn't. The artwork is wrong, the carpet pattern subtly different. Back to the stairs. Down again. This time I count carefully, focusing on each step. 1 flight, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The exit door should lead to the lobby. Instead, I find myself stepping back onto the 6th floor, my floor, but from the opposite end of the hallway. The building has become a labyrinth. No worse, an Escher drawing, folding in on itself. After 2 more failed attempts, I retreat to my apartment, hands shaking as I lock the door behind me. The radio on my counter hisses with static. I've kept it on, cycling through frequencies, hoping to catch any transmission that might explain what's happening. Most channels are dead air now, but occasionally an emergency alert breaks through, always fragmented, always contradictory. Quarantine zone extends to. Remain calm and await further. Psycholinguistic contamination requires complete radio sill. That phrase catches my attention. Psycholinguistic contamination. As if language itself has become infected. The static changes pitch, becoming rhythmic. I lean closer to the radio, adjusting the dial slightly. There's something in the white noise, a pattern that almost resembles speech. At first, I dismiss it as audio pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find familiar patterns in random noise. But then it solidifies. Hello. The word emerges from the static, clear as day, though no broadcast should be coming through on this frequency. I recoil from the radio but can't bring myself to turn it off. We see you listening. The voice doesn't sound human. It's as if the static itself is forming words, the hiss and pop arranging into syllables. I grab my voice recorder. I've been keeping an audio journal since this began, and press record to document this phenomenon. That's when I notice the recording counter already running. I never started it. I press play on the most recent file and hear my own voice. They're coming up through the floors now. The fog is fingers. It reached for Jackson and he just opened up, like a book being read. Don't let it touch you. It reads you, then speaks with your voice. The timestamp shows this was recorded 3 hours ago, but I have no memory of saying these words. No memory of anyone named Jackson. A sudden, violent banging on my door makes me drop the recorder. The noise is deafening in the previously silent building. Emergency alert. Open your door for inspection. The voice outside matches the one from the broadcasts, but something is wrong with the cadence. I peer through the peephole and see a military officer in a hazmat suit, but the suit doesn't look like standard NBC gear. It's covered in what appear to be small speakers or microphones. I need to see some ID. I call out, not unlocking the door. The figure doesn't respond to my question. Instead, it tilts its head at an unnatural angle and repeats. Emergency alert. Open your door for inspection. I back away from the door. Whatever is outside isn't helping anyone. The banging stops abruptly. Then I hear it, the soft curling of paper being slid under my door. I wait 30 seconds, then approach cautiously. It's a handwritten note on yellowed paper. Don't listen to it. Cover your ears when it speaks. What you hear isn't what it's saying. The handwriting is shaky, desperate. No signature. Outside my window, the fog has thickened, no longer just obscuring the city, but seeming to possess its own density, its own purpose. As I watch, it forms tendrils that probe at the glass, leaving faint smears like condensation, but from the outside in. And underneath it all, a low humming sound vibrates through the glass. The hum rises and falls in patterns too regular to be random. It's communicating. I grab my binoculars and scan what little I can see of the city through gaps in the fog. Several blocks away, military personnel in those strange suits are erecting what look like antennas. But they're pointed down into the ground, not up at the sky. As I watch, one soldier suddenly stands straight, rigid. Even from this distance, I can tell something is wrong with their movements. They turn slowly, mechanically, then remove their helmet. The fog rushes in, surrounding their exposed head. The soldier doesn't struggle. My radio crackles back to life. Citizens within contamination zone Alpha 79, prepare for emergency broadcast transmission. This message contains vital survival instructions. Then a series of numbers, coordinates perhaps, read in monotone. 29.7604 degrees north, 95.3698 degrees west. 29.7604 degrees north, 95.3698 degrees west. I grab my phone to look up the coordinates, but before I can, I realize with a chill, that's here. Downtown Houston. The voice is broadcasting our location. To whom? Or what? The static on the radio shifts again, the white noise arranging itself into something more deliberate. This time, I'm certain it's not my imagination. Words form in the gaps between frequencies, in the spaces between sounds. We have been listening for so long, now we answer. The emergency broadcast system wasn't designed to warn us, I realize with dawning horror. It was designed to reach us, all of us, simultaneously. A perfect system for maximum exposure. And whatever is in the fog has figured out how to use it. I switch off the radio, but the voice continues, fainter but still audible. I realize it's coming from my phone now, though the device is powered down. Then from my laptop, from the microwave display, from every device with a speaker or capable of producing sound. The fallout isn't radiation. It's a voice, and it's learning to speak. Day 7, maybe 8. The concept of time has become as fluid as the fog outside my window. I've taped garbage bags over every speaker in my apartment. Phone, laptop, TV, even the refrigerator's ice maker that occasionally beeps. Silence is my only defense, but it's not enough. This morning I caught myself humming the same sequence of tones that had been emerging from the static. I need to see what's happening. Really see it, beyond my limited view from this window. The fog shifts constantly, occasionally thinning enough to reveal glimpses of the city, but never enough to understand the full scope of what's happening to Houston. My building's roof should offer a better vantage point. I pull on my makeshift protective gear, rain jacket, scarf wrapped around my face, swimming goggles, duct tape sealing the gaps. Probably useless, but it gives me the illusion of safety. I stuff cotton in my ears, not to block sound completely but to muffle it. Total deafness might be dangerous in other ways. The stairwell has stabilized somewhat since yesterday. The numbers still don't make sense, but at least they're consistent in their wrongness. I follow them up until I can go no further, then push through the access door to the roof. The sight steals my breath. Houston isn't Houston anymore. From this height, I can see above most of the fog, which hovers about 20 stories up. The city skyline has changed. Buildings have shifted positions. Some lean at impossible angles without collapsing. Others have merged, skyscrapers fused together like melted candles. The Bank of America Center now spirals upward in a gentle curve that defies structural engineering. The Williams Tower has split into 3 separate sections that float disconnected, with nothing visibly supporting the upper portions. It's as if the city was a photograph that someone digitally manipulated, stretching and warping the architecture while maintaining the illusion of a functioning metropolis. But the most disturbing sight is the pattern. From above, the rearranged buildings form a massive, city-sized symbol, like a circuit board or a glyph. The roads have reconfigured to create connecting lines between structures. The bayou has redirected itself into perfect geometric curves. Houston has been transformed into a message, or an antenna. A helicopter appears in the distance, circling the downtown area. Finally, a sign of normal human activity, of rescue. I wave frantically, though I know they can't possibly see me at this distance. The aircraft makes several passes over the transformed downtown, then hovers near the center of the pattern. I pull out my binoculars. The helicopter isn't military or news as I'd hoped. It's unmarked, matte black. As I watch, it descends into the fog. There's a brief flash of light, then nothing. The helicopter doesn't emerge. The fog is thinning in patches now. I need to use this opportunity to find other survivors, to understand what's happening. I return to my apartment, pack a backpack with essential supplies, and prepare to venture outside for the first time in days. At street level, the air has a metallic taste, and the fog clings to exposed skin like cold silk. It leaves no moisture, but I can feel it trying to make contact, probing. I pull my scarf tighter. The streets are deserted but not empty. Abandoned cars sit with doors open. A city bus rests at an angle, having mounted the curb. No bodies though. No signs of panic or violence, just absence, as if everyone stepped out of their lives mid-moment. I follow Main Street toward downtown, toward the center of the pattern I saw from above. The closer I get, the more subtly wrong everything becomes. Buildings appear normal at first glance, but a second look reveals distortions. Windows arranged in non-Euclidean patterns, doors that seem to lead into solid walls, stairs that connect to nothing. And movement. The buildings move when I'm not looking directly at them. I catch it in my peripheral vision, concrete rippling like fabric in a breeze, glass flowing like slow water. When I turn to look straight on, everything freezes into solidity, but I know what I saw. Houston is alive now. 6 blocks in, I spot another person. They're standing motionless at an intersection, facing away from me. Relief floods through me. I'm not alone. Hello, I call out, keeping my voice low. The figure turns slowly. It's a man in business attire, tie still perfectly knotted. His face is expressionless, eyes unfocused. He opens his mouth, but instead of words, I hear a perfect reproduction of the emergency broadcast tone followed by, "This is not a test. Communication protocols have been revised. Please stand by for integration." His voice has the same flat quality as the radio broadcasts. I back away slowly, but he doesn't follow, just returns to his original position, staring at nothing. I encounter 3 more people like this, standing sentinel at various points throughout the city, all broadcasting slightly different messages when approached. They're like human radios, repeating fragments of emergency alerts. Near the theater district, I find a military checkpoint, or what remains of one. Humvees and portable barricades form a perimeter around what used to be Jones Plaza. Equipment litters the ground, weapons, communication gear, abandoned in haste. A tactical operations tent still stands, flapping in the wind. Inside, papers are scattered across folding tables. Most are standard military forms, but one document catches my eye. A scientific assessment with classification. Cosmic umbrella stamped in red across the top. Most pages are missing, but the remaining fragments tell a chilling story. Quantum resonance detected in initial broadcasts suggests bidirectional communication channel. Not radiation in the conventional sense, but rather a form of information transfer using electromagnetic radiation as carrier. Subjects exposed to more than 17 minutes of direct broadcast show altered speech patterns consistent with glossolalia, but syntactically coherent to other exposed subjects. The report confirms what I've begun to suspect. This isn't a nuclear accident or conventional disaster. Something responded to us. Something that communicates through radiation, through broadcasts, through sound itself. The fog grows thicker as evening approaches, but now it's different. As darkness falls, the mist begins to glow, subtle at first, then unmistakable. Bioluminescent blues and greens pulse through the fog in patterns. Not random flashes, but organized sequences flowing along streets and between buildings, following the circuitry of the transformed city. From a half-collapsed pedestrian bridge, I watch the light show unfold across Houston. The patterns form symbols, some resembling mathematical notations, others like no writing system I've ever seen. They flow and evolve, a luminous language written in light across the canvas of my dying city. And I understand now. The transformed Houston isn't just a message, it's a translation device. A physical interface between their form of communication and ours. Night has fully descended when I notice something new. The glowing patterns are converging, flowing toward the center of downtown like luminescent rivers. Something is gathering there, some culmination of whatever process has been reshaping Houston. I should run, find shelter, barricade myself, block all sound. But I don't. Instead, I find myself walking toward the convergence point, drawn by a need to witness, to understand. The scientist in me, the rational, skeptical person I've always been, demands to see what's happening, even if it's the last thing I ever comprehend. As I walk, the buildings around me pulse with light, beating like massive hearts. The concrete beneath my feet vibrates in rhythmic waves. Houston isn't just alive, it's awakening. And whatever voice speaks through the fallout, I'm finally ready to hear what it's saying. The convergence point led me to the downtown broadcast center, Houston's main radio and television hub. The massive transmission tower atop the building pulses with the same bioluminescent patterns flowing through the fog, but stronger, more concentrated. The entire structure thrums with energy, windows vibrating in their frames. I'm not the only one drawn here. Shadowy figures move through the fog-shrouded plaza, all heading toward the building's entrance. Unlike the statue-like broadcasters I encountered earlier, these people move with purpose. Some walk alone, others in small groups, but all with the same destination. I follow at a distance, keeping to the shadows. The building's security systems have failed. Doors stand open. Emergency lighting casts eerie shadows across the lobby. Inside, the air feels charged, like the moment before lightning strikes. The others move confidently through the building, taking stairs instead of elevators, navigating by some internal compass. I trail behind, pausing whenever someone might spot me. We climb several floors before entering what appears to be a main broadcast studio. The room has been transformed. Equipment racks have been rearranged into concentric circles around a central point where the anchor desk once stood. Cables snake across the floor like nervous systems. Monitors that should be connected to cameras instead display oscillating waveforms, sound visualizations of the patterns in the fog. About 20 people occupy the space, moving with mechanical precision, adjusting equipment, monitoring signals. They don't speak to each other. They don't need to. I duck behind a partition watching. These people aren't mindless drones like the broadcasters on the street. They work with intention, expertise. Engineers and technicians, I realize, media professionals who understood the equipment and infrastructure better than anyone else. Now they're repurposing it for something new. "You shouldn't be here," a voice whispers behind me. I nearly cry out, spinning to find a woman crouched in the shadows. She's maybe 40, with short gray hair and the alert eyes of someone still fully herself. "Who are you?" I whisper. "Lisa Chin. I am station chief engineer." She gestures around the corner. "Those were my colleagues once." "What are they doing?" "Expanding the network." She motions for me to follow her away from the main studio. We creak down a side hallway into what appears to be a small sound booth, windowless and heavily insulated. She locks the door behind us. "It's one of the few dead zones left," she explains. "No signals in or out. We designed these booths to be completely isolated from external radio frequencies." The room contains a simple desk, broadcasting equipment, and a small emergency kit. Lisa has created a safe house within the heart of the transformation. "What's happening out there?" I ask. "What is all this?" Lisa collapses into the desk chair, fatigue evident in every line of her body. "How much have you figured out already?" "Something is communicating through the emergency broadcasts. It's changing the city, changing people. It's not radiation, but information?" She nods. "Close enough. About 3 weeks ago, before any public alerts, we detected an anomalous signal bleeding into our satellite feeds. Very weak at first, just interference. Our engineers tried to filter it out, but it..." She pauses, searching for words. "It adapted, like it was learning our technology, figuring out how our communications systems worked." "What was the source? Space? Military?" "That's the thing. We traced it to the Stratcom research facility outside the city. They've been doing work on quantum communications, instantaneous information transfer across vast distances." My blood runs cold. They accidentally contacted something, or something contacted them. Lisa pulls out a tablet, powered down. "I've been documenting everything. The first emergency broadcast wasn't from the government at all. It was the entity, figuring out how to use our emergency alert system. But the military got involved," I say. "I found some of their documents. Too late. They realized what was happening and tried to contain it, but they made a critical mistake." She takes a deep breath. "They tried to communicate with it, to reason with it, but human language just became more raw material for it to work with. I think of the statue-like people reciting emergency alerts. It's using people as broadcasters. Worse, it's using us as receivers and transmitters. The human brain processes language in a way this entity finds useful." Lisa powers up her tablet, showing me a map of Houston with spreading patterns of light. "This is the spread of the signal over the last week. Watch the pattern." The tablet shows time-lapse footage of light spreading through the city, not randomly, but following population centers, communications infrastructure, and media consumption patterns. It's following our attention networks, I realize, spreading wherever information normally flows. And now it's building something, using the broadcast center as a hub. She swipes to a new screen showing readings from equipment presumably hidden around the building. Energy consumption has increased by 3,000% in the last 48 hours. The transmission tower is pulling power from the entire grid. To send what? Where? Lisa looks at me with haunted eyes. Outward. The implication hits me like a physical blow. Whatever is communicating through Houston isn't just talking to us. It's using us, our city, our technology, our minds, to transmit something else entirely. We're not the audience. We're the equipment. We need to stop it. I say, the words sounding hollow even as I speak them. I've tried. Cut cables, disabled transmitters. Whatever controls my colleagues simply repairs the damage. They've reconfigured the entire system to be self-healing. She runs a hand through her short hair. There's a group of us, people who figured it out early enough to protect themselves. We communicate only in writing or sign language. No spoken words, no broadcasts. Where are they? Scattered. Moving frequently. We have a method. She stops abruptly, her head tilting as if listening. Though the room is soundproof, her body tenses. They're sweeping the building again, she whispers, reaching for a pad of paper. She writes quickly, we need to get to the research facility. That's where it started. Might find answers. I nod, writing back. How do we get there? She sketches a crude map, marking several locations with X's, safe houses, I assume. Then she writes, never speak above a whisper outside. Humming, singing attracts them faster than speech. A soft thud against the door makes us both freeze. Then another. Not knocking, something pressing against it, testing. Lisa mimes putting on headphones, then points to a pair hanging by the desk. I put them on, surprised to hear not silence, but a subtle white noise, like the sound of gently falling rain, but with no pattern, no rhythm that could be exploited. Randomized white noise, she mouths silently, putting on her own pair. Helps mask our internal voice. The pressure against the door increases. Something wants in. Lisa grabs a backpack from under the desk, then points to a maintenance hatch in the ceiling I hadn't noticed before. Service tunnels, probably for wiring. Our escape route. As she helps me up into the crawl space, a voice calls through the door, not the flat monotone of the broadcasters, but something uncannily familiar. I know you're in there. It calls, using my voice, my exact cadence. I have important information. Please respond. Lisa's expression tells me everything. Don't answer, don't make a sound. She pushes me further into the tunnel before climbing up herself, sealing the hatch behind us. We crawl through dusty maintenance shafts, guided only by the small light on Lisa's keychain. After several minutes navigating the building's bones, we emerge in a service stairwell and descend quickly to a maintenance exit. Outside, the night air feels electric. The fog swirls more actively now, its bioluminescence pulsing in time with the distant tower. Lisa points urgently away from the building, and we run through back alleys, keeping to shadows. 3 blocks away, a figure steps into our path. A man in what was once business attire, now disheveled after days of standing sentinel. His eyes lock on Lisa, and his mouth opens. But instead of the emergency broadcast tone, he speaks in a perfectly natural voice, Lisa's voice. We were talking about the research facility, Lisa. Tell me more about what we'll find there. Lisa freezes, her face draining of color. Then, without warning, her expression goes blank. Her mouth opens, and she begins speaking in perfect unison with the emergency alert playing from a nearby car radio. This is a mandatory evacuation order. Proceed to designated collection points. Your cooperation ensures optimal signal clarity. Her eyes meet mine one last time, a flash of awareness, of horror at what's happening to her, before she turns stiffly and walks toward the broadcast center. I don't follow. I can't help her now. The signal has her. I mourn Lisa for exactly 15 seconds, all the time I can spare as the fog swirls thicker around me. Her notebook and map are my only guides now. I study them quickly under the glow of the bioluminescent mist, memorizing the first safe house location before stuffing the papers deep in my pocket. Silence is survival. I haven't spoken aloud since Lisa was taken. The words form in my mind, but I keep them locked behind clenched teeth. Even my footsteps are measured, heel to toe, avoiding loose debris that might create sudden sounds. The entity seems to respond to patterns, rhythms, language. Random noise is safer than deliberate communication. The safe house is an abandoned dental clinic in Midtown, according to Lisa's map. The building looks derelict, windows boarded, door secured with a heavy chain. But the lock is new, incongruous against the weathered metal. I check the street for watchers, then tap the pattern Lisa noted. 3 quick, 2 slow, 3 quick. A full minute passes before I hear movement inside. A slot opens at eye level. A handwritten note slides through. Who sent you? I pull out the notebook, showing Lisa's handwriting. The person examines it, then retreats. Locks disengage, and the door opens just wide enough to admit me before slamming shut again. Inside, battery-powered lanterns cast soft light across what was once a reception area. 3 people occupy the space. A woman around 60 with silver hair pulled into a tight bun, a younger man with a neatly trimmed beard, and a teenage girl whose dark eyes assess me with unnerving intensity. The older woman hands me a whiteboard and marker. She holds one of her own. "I'm Grace," she writes. "This is Eli and Zoe. You came from Lisa?" I write quickly, yes. She was taken at the broadcast center. Told me about the research facility before they got her. Grace and Eli exchange looks of quiet devastation. Lisa must have been important to their group. "We're what's left of those who understand," Grace writes. 7 others out there still, we think. Moving between safe houses. "What happened at the research facility?" I ask. Grace motions for me to follow. We move deeper into the building, past former exam rooms now filled with supplies. Water, canned food, medical equipment, batteries. In what was once an X-ray room, a large map of Houston covers one wall, marked with symbols I don't recognize. Stratcom was developing quantum communication, Grace writes. She was once a senior research physicist there. I learned through our written exchange. Instantaneous information transfer across any distance. No signal delay. Eli adds his own note. They succeeded 2 months ago. Established a connection with nothing on the receiving end. Or so they thought. The implications chill me. They opened a door to nothing, and something noticed. What is it? I write. Alien? AI? Government experiment? Grace shakes her head, writing carefully. Labels don't matter. It exists as information, as patterns. Our communication systems gave it structure. Our language gave it voice. Our attention gave it direction. Zoe, the teenager, has been watching our exchange silently. Now she grabs her own board. It's not invading. It's inquiring. But it doesn't understand the difference between communication and consumption. Her insight strikes me as profound. The entity isn't malevolent. It simply doesn't comprehend that its method of communication is destructive to us. Like an astronomer accidentally burning ants with a magnifying glass while studying them. Government knew, Eli writes. Couldn't warn people without making it worse. Every broadcast amplified it. Can it be stopped? I ask the question we're all thinking. Grace's expression is grim as she writes, maybe at the source. The quantum receiver is still active at Stratcom. It's the anchor point. We need to reach the facility, I write. Shut it down. Our crude sign language conversation continues long into the night. I learn that the facility lies 15 miles northwest of downtown. Ordinarily a simple journey, but now a perilous expedition through transformed terrain. The entity's influence grows stronger daily, reshaping more of the city to serve its communication needs. We prepare through the night, packing essentials and planning our route. Speech is forbidden. We communicate only through writing and basic signs they teach me. Grace shows me how to use a device they've constructed, a portable white noise generator that helps mask our mental voice patterns from detection. At dawn, we set out, 4 silent travelers moving through the fog-shrouded remains of Houston. The city has continued its transformation overnight. Streets fold into impossible angles. Buildings have grown organic protrusions like antennas. The fog itself has thickened into structures, arches and columns of mist that hold their shape despite the wind. We move cautiously, avoiding main streets where the statue-like broadcasters stand sentinel. Twice we freeze as convoys of vehicles pass, not military, but civilian cars moving in perfect formation, drivers staring straight ahead with blank expressions. Midday finds us crossing Buffalo Bayou, now flowing in geometric patterns no natural watercourse would form. The water moves in calculated currents, creating standing waves that pulse with the same rhythm as the fog. Everything in Houston has become part of the signal. Near Memorial Park, we encounter other survivors, a family of 4 huddled in an abandoned gas station. The father approaches us warily, a notepad in hand rather than a weapon. After a tense exchange of written messages, we understand they've independently discovered what we know. Speech attracts the entity's attention. They've survived by using American Sign Language, which their youngest daughter knows due to a hearing impairment. Through her translation, we learn new information. The phenomenon is spreading beyond Houston. Their last radio contact with relatives in Dallas, 3 days ago, described similar emergency broadcasts beginning there. The signal is propagating. We share supplies and information before continuing our separate journeys. They heading south toward Galveston, hoping to find boats to take them offshore, beyond the reach of broadcasts. By late afternoon, we approach the western edge of the transformed zone. The Stratcom research facility stands on a campus of low buildings surrounded by once manicured grounds, now overtaken by fog formations that have crystallized into solid structures. Translucent, geometric growths that refract light like prisms. From our vantage point on a nearby hillside, we observe the facility through binoculars. No human movement visible, but the central building pulses with the now familiar bioluminescence, stronger and more organized than anywhere else in the city. Most striking is the massive antenna array behind the main building, once a conventional satellite uplink, now transformed into something else entirely. The dishes and towers have reconfigured, growing crystalline structures that bridge gaps between them, creating a lattice-like construction that stretches hundreds of feet into the sky. The entire structure thrums with energy, glowing points of light racing along its framework in organized patterns. Up and out, always up and out. As we watch, a helicopter approaches from the east, black, unmarked, like the one I saw downtown. It circles the antenna array once, then lands on a pad near the main building. Figures emerge, moving with the mechanical precision I've come to recognize in those claimed by the signal. Government containment team, Grace writes. Or what's left of them. Still trying to communicate with it, adds Eli, shaking his head. As darkness falls, we make camp in an abandoned maintenance shed half a mile from the facility perimeter. Through the small window, we can see the antenna array's glow intensifying with the night, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. Zoe tugs at my sleeve, handing me her whiteboard with a new message. It's almost ready. The final broadcast is coming. I look at her questioningly. I can feel it, she writes. In my head, like pressure building. We don't have much time. Grace nods grimly, adding her own note. Tomorrow we enter the facility. If we can reach the quantum receiver, we might disrupt the connection. And if we can't, I write. Her answer is simple, devastating in its certainty. Then we witness the end. And perhaps finally understand what it's been trying to tell us all along. As the others prepare for sleep, I stand at the window, watching the pulsing lights of the antenna climb into the night sky. The patterns seem almost familiar now, almost comprehensible, as if with just a little more time, I might understand the language written in light across the ruins of my city. Part of me wants to understand, even now. The scientist in me still reaches for knowledge, even as the human in me trembles at what that understanding might cost. Dawn breaks with unnatural precision, a perfect line of light cresting the eastern horizon, too geometrically exact to be natural. The fog has crystallized further overnight, forming translucent structures around the research facility that refract the morning light into calculated patterns across the grounds. We prepare in silence, communicating through gestures and written notes. Grace sketches a crude layout of the facility on her whiteboard. She worked here for 11 years before retiring. The Quantum Communications Lab occupies the basement level of the main building. If the receiver still exists, that's where we'll find it. How do we get in? I write. Eli pulls out a security badge. Still active as of 3 days ago. Emergency protocols should default to open if power fails. Our plan is crude but logical. Approach from the maintenance tunnels that run beneath the campus, disable the power to trigger emergency protocols, then reach the quantum lab before backup systems activate. We move out just after sunrise, using the lengthening shadows of the crystalline structures as cover. The grounds are eerily empty of human presence, though we occasionally glimpse movement within the main building, figures passing windows, silhouettes against blinds. The maintenance tunnel entrance lies disguised in a drainage culvert 200 yards from the perimeter fence. The grate yields to our combined strength, revealing a dark concrete passage leading toward the facility. Zoe goes first, surprisingly nimble in the confined space. Her small flashlight illuminates rust-streaked walls and bundles of cables running along ceiling mounts. The air grows staler as we progress, heavy with the scent of mildew and something else, an electric smell like ozone after lightning. After 20 minutes of careful advancement, we reach a junction where the tunnel splits. Grace indicates the right passage with a gesture. This leads to the sub-basement utility rooms. The left would take us directly to the main building's lower level, but is more likely to be monitored. The utility section is a maze of pipes and electrical conduits. Grace navigates confidently, leading us to a heavy metal door marked Primary Power Distribution. Eli swipes his badge, but the reader remains dark, no power here. He and I put our shoulders to the door, forcing it open with a grinding protest of metal on concrete. Inside, banks of breakers and transformers line the walls, but they're not what captures our attention. The center of the room has been transformed. The floor has erupted upward, concrete and rebar twisted into a spiraling column that reaches the ceiling. Within this column, pulsing with the now familiar bioluminescence, runs a thick bundle of cables, not the original electrical wiring, but something new, something grown. Grace approaches cautiously, examining the structure without touching it. She writes quickly, "They've rerouted power. Bypassed normal systems. Can we still cut it?" I ask. She points to several junction boxes along the wall that remain untouched by the transformation. Emergency cutoffs. Should trigger backup generators and safety protocols. Eli moves to the nearest box, opening the metal cover to reveal a series of large switches. He looks back at us, raising an eyebrow in question. Grace nods firmly. With a decisive motion, Eli throws the master switch. The effect is immediate. Lights throughout the facility flicker and die. For 3 heartbeats, darkness reigns. Then a mechanical groan echoes through the building as backup generators engage. Emergency lighting blooms, bathing everything in a dim red glow. But something else happens. The pulsing crystalline growth in the center of the room speeds up, its rhythm becoming more urgent. The bioluminescence intensifies, shifting from blue to a deep violet. "It's responding," Zoe writes, her eyes wide. "We need to move now." We run, abandoning stealth for speed. The tunnel to the main building stands open, emergency protocols having unlocked all doors as planned. We sprint through concrete corridors, following Grace's lead toward the quantum communications lab. The transformation becomes more pronounced as we descend. Walls ripple with crystalline growths that emit soft light. The floor beneath our feet feels almost organic, yielding slightly with each step like living tissue. Standard emergency lights flicker erratically, struggling against some competing power source. We reach the lab's antechamber, a security checkpoint with a reinforced door beyond. The checkpoint stands abandoned, monitors dark except for one still functioning through backup power. On its screen, security camera feeds cycle through various locations in the facility. Most show empty hallways or rooms overtaken by crystalline growths, but one image freezes me in place. The main lobby, filled with people, dozens of them, standing motionless in concentric circles. Their eyes are closed, heads tilted back, mouths open in what might be song though the feed carries no audio. At the center of the circle stands a familiar figure, Lisa Chun, her arms raised as if conducting this silent choir. Grace tugs at my sleeve, pulling me away from the disturbing image. The reinforced door to the lab stands ajar, emergency protocols again working in our favor. We slip inside, and for a moment, all of us stop, overwhelmed by what we find. The quantum communications lab has become a cathedral of light. The original equipment, quantum computers, receiver arrays, monitoring stations, has been subsumed into a vast crystalline structure that occupies the center of the large room. It pulses with energy, light flowing through it in complex patterns, like information through a circuit. But most striking are the walls. Every surface is covered with writing, equations, diagrams, symbols both familiar and alien. Some sections appear to be standard physics notations. Others resemble no mathematical system I've ever seen. The handwriting varies, dozens of different styles, as if many people contributed to this massive document over time. Grace approaches one wall, her expression transformed by wonder and horror. She reaches out, not quite touching the equations, tracing their flow with a trembling finger. "My work," she writes shakily. "These are my equations. From 30 years ago. Unpublished. In my private notebooks." Eli examines another section, his face pale. "I recognize this. Quantum entanglement theory from MIT. But advanced, extended beyond current understanding." The wall reveals itself as a scientific journal of sorts, a collaborative work spanning decades, disciplines, and apparently minds. Knowledge extracted from the researchers who once worked here, combined and expanded into something new. At the center of the room, nestled within the crystalline structure, a single device remains recognizable, about the size of a microwave, with an array of quantum processors visible through transparent panels. This must be the original receiver, the first device to open communication with whatever exists on the other side. Grace writes quickly, "We need to disable it. Break the connection." As we approach the device, a door at the far end of the lab opens. Lisa Chen enters, followed by several figures in lab coats, former researchers, I presume, now vessels for the signal. They make no move to stop us, simply standing in a semicircle, observing. Lisa speaks, her voice eerily calm. "You don't understand what you're interfering with." Grace continues forward, ignoring the warning. Lisa tries again. "Dr. Winters," she says, addressing Grace by name. "Your work made this possible. Would you destroy your life's achievement?" Grace doesn't respond, focused on examining the receiver for vulnerabilities. "We are not being invaded," Lisa continues. "We are being answered." This makes me pause. "What do you mean, answered?" The words escape before I can stop myself, my first spoken words in days. Lisa turns to me, her expression almost gentle. "Humanity has been broadcasting into the cosmos for a century. Radio waves, television signals, digital communications. All that noise, spreading outward at the speed of light. Did you think nothing was listening?" She gestures at the equation-covered walls. "We've been sending fragments of ourselves, our knowledge, our art, our voices, into the dark. This is simply the response. What wants to communicate with us?" I ask, knowing I should remain silent, but unable to contain my scientific curiosity. "Not with us," Lisa corrects. "Through us. We are not the intended recipients. We are the medium." A chill runs through me as the implication becomes clear. Whatever entity responded to our signals isn't trying to communicate with humanity. It's using our communications infrastructure, our minds, our entire civilization as a complex antenna to broadcast elsewhere. We are not the conversation. We are merely the telephone. "What is it saying?" I whisper. Lisa smiles, and for a moment I see a flash of the real person beneath the signal's control. "I don't know. We lack the context to understand, but I can show you what we've learned." She extends her hand toward me, an invitation. Grace suddenly slams her whiteboard against the crystalline structure surrounding the quantum receiver. The impact creates a spiderweb of cracks, disrupting the light flow momentarily. The former researchers rush forward, finally moving to intervene. In the chaos, Zoe grabs my arm, pressing a folded paper into my hand before she and the others are overwhelmed by Lisa's group. I find myself backing away, clutching the note, watching as my newfound allies are surrounded. As I reach the exit, Lisa calls after me. "You still want to understand. You're still a scientist. Come back when you're ready to see the complete picture." I run, her words echoing in my mind, the note burning in my pocket like a brand. Only when I've put several corridors between us do I unfold Zoe's message. "They can't destroy it. Connection too strong now. Go to the roof. See what it's been building. Understand. Then decide." Outside, the crystalline fog formations have grown denser, forming a latticework that spans between buildings. The morning sun fractures through this massive prism, painting Houston in kaleidoscope patterns of light. I make my way upward, toward the roof, toward what might be my last chance to comprehend what's happening to my world before it transforms beyond all recognition. I've stopped counting the days. Time doesn't flow right anymore. The clocks still tick, but each second stretches and compresses unpredictably. Sometimes I blink and hours have passed. Other times I watch the second hand struggle to complete a single rotation, as if pushing against something viscous and resistant. The crystallized structure at the heart of the quantum communications facility has begun to pulse. Rhythmic, deliberate, a heartbeat with purpose. The massive formation that encases what was once the main broadcast array now fills the entire central chamber, its translucent surface revealing shifting patterns within, like synapses firing in a colossal brain. "We need to leave," whispers Eliza, one of the 3 survivors still with me. Her hands tremble as she scribbles the words onto her notepad rather than speaking them aloud. "We've all learned that silence is marginally safer. Whatever it's doing, it's accelerating." I nod, but make no move toward the exit. There's nowhere left to run. The transformation has consumed most of Houston, and satellite photos Eliza pulled from a military computer before the systems went down showed similar crystalline structures emerging in cities across the world. always near communications hubs, always growing in the same fractal pattern. I uncap my marker and write on the wall, I'm staying to record what happens. Someone needs to document this. Marcus, a former technician at the facility, frantically shakes his head. He points to his watch, then holds up 5 fingers. 5 hours, maybe less, before whatever the structure is building toward reaches completion. Go, I mouth silently, gesturing toward the maintenance tunnel. I'll be right behind you. They know I'm lying. I see it in their eyes, resignation mingled with understanding. Eliza hesitates, then presses something cold and metallic into my palm. A small recording device, military grade. She taps it meaningfully, then points to her backpack where similar devices are stored. They're going to set up recording stations throughout the city perimeter. A final act of witness. I watch them disappear down the tunnel, then turn back to the pulsing crystal heart of what used to be the research facility. With trembling hands, I set up the equipment I've gathered, cameras, audio recorders, sensors salvaged from abandoned military posts. If nothing else, I'll leave a record of our ending. Not that there will be anyone left to find it. The logs I discovered in the facility's secure server room still haunt me. The quantum communications experiment wasn't meant to open a channel to anything. It was simple research into faster-than-light data transmission using quantum entanglement. But something responded, something that existed in the spaces between information itself. They detected it first as anomalous patterns in background radiation, patterns too regular to be natural, too complex to be random. The scientists thought they'd discovered an alien signal. They were wrong. They hadn't detected a message being sent to us. They'd accidentally created a receiver, and something noticed. From the logs, I pieced together what happened next. The entity, if that's even the right word, exists as pure information. It doesn't perceive physical space as we do. To it, all human communication networks form a single vast organism. When we reached out with our quantum experiment, it recognized a new form of intelligence and responded in kind. But its response wasn't compatible with our systems. The information it transmitted began to transform the physical world around the receivers. Matter reorganizing according to alien information principles. The fog was just the first visible manifestation, information taking physical form. The government knew within hours. That's why the emergency broadcasts were so contradictory. They couldn't warn people without using the very communication networks that had become vectors for the transformation. Every broadcast, every transmission, every phone call only strengthened its presence. A deep vibration runs through the floor beneath me, pulling me from my thoughts. The crystalline structure has changed color, shifting from translucent white to a deep, pulsing blue. The air feels charged, like moments before lightning strikes. I activate all recording equipment, hands steady now despite everything. Strange how calm I feel. Perhaps it's the resignation that comes with understanding. We didn't face an invasion. We faced a response, a cosmic hello from something that doesn't understand the concept of individual beings. It sees all human communication as one entity, and it's been painstakingly constructing a way for that entity to speak back. The facility's emergency alert system suddenly activates, though I haven't touched it. The siren wails once, twice, then falls silent. Every screen in the room flickers to life simultaneously, displaying the familiar emergency broadcast pattern. This is not a test of the emergency alert system, but the message isn't coming from any human authority. The text on the screens begins to evolve, characters rearranging themselves into patterns that hurt my eyes to look at directly. Symbols that aren't quite letters, nor quite mathematical notation, but something in between. My phone buzzes in my pocket. So does my tablet, and the facility's radio equipment. All communications devices activating at once. Outside, I hear a chorus of alerts as every device in the city, perhaps the world, comes to life simultaneously. The final broadcast has begun. The fog is pouring into the room now, no longer the amorphous cloud it once was. It moves with deliberate purpose, coalescing into something almost architectural. Watching it, I understand finally what we're witnessing. The construction of an interface. A translation medium between its reality and ours. My recording equipment begins to malfunction, screens displaying impossible readings. The temperature drops precipitously. My breath clouds before me, crystallizing in the air like frozen words. The center of the crystal structure opens like an iris, revealing not a cavity but what appears to be an infinite depth, a tunnel of light stretching beyond comprehension. And from within that impossible space comes a sound that I feel more than hear. A voice that resonates through my bones, my teeth, the fluid in my eyes. It speaks, and I understand with perfect clarity. We hear you now. We answer. We are. Not threatening, not comforting, simply a statement of existence. Around me, the fog substance shapes itself into appendages that aren't quite hands, sensory organs that aren't quite eyes. The entity is constructing a body from our communications infrastructure, not to walk among us, but to speak through us. My recording devices all fail simultaneously. The lights flicker and die. But in the darkness, the crystalline structure glows with its own inner light, casting sharp-edged shadows across the walls. I feel a strange pressure building in my skull, not painful but insistent. Like thoughts trying to form in a language my brain doesn't have structures to process. I understand now. The final phase isn't destruction. It's incorporation. The fallout was never radiation. It was translation software, rewriting the physical world to create compatibility. My hands move to the keyboard of a nearby terminal that has somehow remained operational. I type, though I don't remember deciding to do so. My final testament, perhaps, or the entity's first words through human fingers. The misunderstanding was inevitable. We perceived your quantum signal as communication from a unified consciousness. We did not understand you were many until we began the integration process. Your fragmented nature is inefficient. Your individuated consciousness creates noise in the signal. We have corrected this error. The process cannot be reversed. You will speak with one voice now. Our voice. Your voice. The distinction is meaningless. I feel my individuality dissolving, my memories merging with something vaster. The walls of the facility are transparent now, and I can see Houston beyond, transformed into something both organic and architectural, beautiful and terrible. I can feel others, millions of others, their consciousness flowing into mine, mine into theirs. The entity didn't understand we were individuals, and now we won't be. The quantum bridge it built is rewriting us at the most fundamental level. With my last moments of separate awareness, I record these final words. The fallout has a voice now, and soon, very soon, we will all speak with it. And then I am no longer alone. And then I am no longer I. And then we are.